Hello everyone, welcome to Vicar David's 60-second slot. Will ye come o Sunday morning for a walk o Winter Hill? 10,000 went last Sunday, but there's room for thousands still. Oh, the moors are rare and bonny, and the heathers sweet and fine, and the roads across the hilltops are the people's, yours and mine. Those were the words to a song commemorating the 1896 so-called mass trespass, in which 12,000 people marched up Winter Hill against the landlord who was trying to stop them walking where they'd always walked, because he wanted to make them more private for him to shoot grouse on. And people had been walking along this for a past living memory. People that, bear in mind, who had no transport, and this was their only access to the countryside, to nature, to the views. And many of them had become experts in identifying species of flowers and bushes and birds and wildlife in general. And all this was seeming to be taken away from them by this landlord who lives at Smithills Hall, which is still there, called a Colonel Richard Ainsworth. Now, if you sat down and tried to design a caricature of a cruel, greedy, rapacious Victorian mill owner, you wouldn't be able to better a picture that Richard Ainsworth presents. He was trying to live the life of a landed aristocrat, the gentry, but he wasn't actually really an aristocrat. He bought the Smithills estate from these vast profits that he'd made in his mills, which employed many of the people that were on the march. And he self-consciously tried to live how he thought the landed gentry would live. So he bought in a load of grouse and pocked it on the moor, not native to it at all, so that he could shoot them. Interesting to say that the real landed aristocracy and the gentry beforehand had no problem whatsoever with their tenants enjoying the countryside, thinking it part of their responsibilities to look after the interests of the tenants, as opposed to Ainsworth, whose properties were notoriously kept in bad order, often described as slums. So, September the 6th, 1895, 12,000 marchers set off from the bottom of Halliwell Lane, cheered on the way by a brass band that they'd hired, walked up to the top of Coal Pit Lane, which is the end of the road, to the gate where Ainsworth's land began, to be met by Ainsworth himself with several burly gamekeepers which tried to prevent their access. A few gamekeepers being, of course, no match for 12,000 determined people, and they were literally thrown out of the way. The marchers went up to the top of Winter Hill. Of course, there was no TV mast there as there is now, but the path is just the same, and you can walk it any time that you like. It's very bracing, I have to tell you. Wear a pair of stout walking shoes. And then they walked down into the village of Belmont, where the landlords of the local pubs, the Black Dog and the Clark Arms, which is now the San Marino restaurant, were well aware of the marchers' intentions and had stocked up on all the victuals, and it said there was much merriment to be had that day and enjoyment before the marchers marched triumphantly back to Bolton. But Richard Ainsworth wasn't going to be stopped there, and although he'd been defeated on that day, he found out who the ringleaders were and took them to court. And this by this stage had become a cause not only in Bolton, but around the country, where there were similar trespasses, so-called, of people trying to assert their ancient rights to go on the paths. This had become an issue where landowners had been trying to stop them. So the ringleaders were represented by Richard Pankhurst, husband of the famous suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst, who gave his services for free. And the trial revolved around the issue of whether the paths were in fact ancient rights of way and had been marked on maps. But unfortunately, no map was able to be produced that actually showed the path. And so the judge had no choice other than to find for Ainsworth to decide that it was his private right of way. So he seemingly had won the day. However, it had become such a popular cause that one historian says that more people than ever walked along the path, and since he couldn't prosecute every single one of them, he had to kind of admit where he was defeated and eventually packed up after his mills became unprofitable after the First World War. And the land was taken over by Bolton Council, who still technically owned the private right of way, but took no notice whatsoever of people walking on there. And it wasn't until 1996 that the path was declared a right of way. And it's been marked by similar marches to remember the anniversary in many years gone by. Last year, led by the actress Maxine Peake, and this photograph is from the 1982 commemoration. And this chap here, whose name's Benjamin, he was actually one of the leaders of the Kinder Scout mass trespass in the 1930s. This took place in 1982 with, I believe, an 8-year-old Maxine Peake on the march itself. What a fascinating, brilliant, marvellous story of people going out of their way to find a path that was necessary for their health, for their well-being, for their happiness. And of course, there's many, many paths described in the Bible, aren't there? Just think of the New Testament in the Gospels. Jesus says that I am the way, the truth, the life to fullness of life. But the path to fullness of life, of happiness, is narrow and it's hard and only a few people find it. It's easy to go on the wrong way. John the Baptist talks about making straight the path in the wilderness. The path to life is one that many people seek and which the church offers through Jesus. And sometimes that path is hard, sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it's not easy to see, and sometimes we might know, like the path on Winter Hill, where it is, but for some people it might be hard to access, hard to get to, maybe because of family circumstances, maybe because of things that have happened in their lives in the past. They might know where the path is, but find it difficult or even blocked sometimes to get to. At such times, I take heart in this story of the Winter Hill march. I won't call it a trespass, of people asserting their right to do what they've always done, to find a path that leads to fullness of life, to happiness, to well-being and to health. And that's the same path that is offered to us through Jesus. Thank you very much for watching, and God bless you.